Good evening. So my grandmother is worldly famous for a saying that, oh, what are the neighbors going to say? She used to say that a lot. As my friends and I would be racing out of the house to go play in the neighborhood, as we were heading out the door, you could always hear my grandmother shouting out from behind us, "Hey, don't be knuckleheads now. Think of what the neighbors will say." As a kid growing up, I used to hate that. It drove me nuts. I used to think, hey, who cares what the neighbors say? Who cares what the lady next door thought of us? You know, lonely old Leah with her yappy dog, who no one ever came to visit her anyway. She used to steal our wiffle balls that we hid into her yard. Who cares what she thought? Who cared what crabby Ron from across the street thought? The man never smiled and would always yell at us at night, "Hey, keep it down," as we were playing out in the streets. I used to think, hey, who are they to judge us? It wasn't like my friends and I were troublemakers, well, for the most part. We actually did a lot of good for the neighborhood. We played on the neighborhood softball team that was sponsored by the local police department. That was pretty cool because when you played for them, you got a brand new jersey, professional looking, that had our names printed across the back in big reflective letters. And the summer that I turned 17, we actually had a fantastic team. We had just won a very big playoff game against a rival team. We were so excited that we didn't even go home to change. We went straight from the ball field to a friend's house who was having a party, because his parents weren't out of town. But by the time that we got there, it was obvious the word had gotten out, and the place was jamming. There was music blasting out of every window. People were dancing up on the deck. Well, my friends and I went inside, and sure enough, within a couple minutes, there was a pounding on the door, and the police came in to break up the party. Kids were running everywhere, jumping out of windows, climbing out of the banisters. My friends and I made it down into the basement, through the back door, and we're running through the yard. We're steps away from getting to the path in the woods when suddenly a police officer shouts out to us, "Stop!" A bright light hits us from behind, and we stand frozen in our tracks. Well, one of the guys in my crew said, "Hey, they don't know who we are. Run!" We launched into our escape and vanished into the woods, scot-free. We made it through the woods, came out to the next street behind us. As we're walking home, we noticed a police cruiser pulling up behind us. The window rolls down and a voice comes out of the cab. "Hey, boys. Great softball game tonight." It was the captain of our softball team. We gathered around his side of the car as he said to us, "Hey, I've got two things for you. Number one, next time," he said, we've got a huge championship game tomorrow. I need you guys to go home and get some rest tonight." We said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Number two, the next time you go to an underage party, don't wear your softball uniforms with your names printed across the back in big reflective letters. I can see you guys a mile away." I couldn't help but ask. I said, "Sir, are you going to tell our parents?" And he said, "Well, that depends on how well you play tomorrow." The next night, my friends and I played the greatest game of softball you've ever seen. People were hustling and diving and sweating and bleeding. We played as if our lives depended upon it. In the end, we won the championship game. The captain still told our parents, and we got in loads of trouble. But the funny thing is, I didn't care, because something happened that night to me that changed my perspective. At one point during the game, I happened to look out into the stands, and sitting in the very front row was lonely old Leah with her yappy dog, and she was waving me over. And I went over to her, and she said, "Hey, good luck tonight, Stephen. I just want you to know I'm very proud of you." Great weight sat on my chest as I've been mean to her in the past. Sitting 2 rows behind her was Crabby Ron, who was smiling and giving me a thumbs up gesture saying, "Great job." Well, that's when it occurred to me that the stands were filled with all of our neighbors. Everyone was there. Mr. Benai, who lends us his shop vac every time our basement floods. Mr. Bobbin, who fixed our roof after a tree branch broke through. Mrs. Hayes, who babysits for my brother and I whenever my mother would work. Mrs. Buzanowski, who taught me how to shoot foul shots in the basketball hoop in her driveway. They were all there. Suddenly, I wasn't so worried about getting into trouble as I was embarrassed about being a knucklehead. And I wondered if they knew about the party the night before. Then I thought, boy, when my grandmother used to say, think of what the neighbors would say, I think now it had less to do about judgment on their part and more about character on my part. My parents actively chose this neighborhood to make their home and to raise their children. There comes a responsibility with that. I think about our community is an extension of who we are, and our neighborhood is an extension of who our family can be considered part of. Because we all depend on each other, and we all need each other for support and for help. And my actions and my behaviors speak to who I am, but it also speaks to who my neighbors are and what community that I am from. So never has this been more apparent to me than now as a parent, as a father of 3, and as my children go racing out the door to go play with their friends. I'm actually shocked to hear myself say, hey, don't be knuckleheads. Think of what the neighbors will say.